It's Super Videos back at you for another Q&A video. This is going to be Q&A number 25. As always, if you're not caught up with the Walking Dead's TV show or comic book, you may not want to watch this video because things may be spoiled for you. So that being said, let's get right into this. Let's start with the Walking Dead show questions. The first question comes from Bilat Ni Jeny. The first one is, if the lineup were to be composed of leaders in the different communities/groups, who do you think Negan would Lucille? Rick, Gregory, Maggie, Ezekiel, Natania, or that hooded figure man? He's talking about the one in the boots. So let's look at this individually. Gregory, probably not, because Gregory follows orders and he kneels whenever Negan wants him to kneel, so he's a safe character in terms of doing what Negan wants. So not Gregory. For Maggie, Negan took an interest in Maggie in terms of her looks and everything, so probably not Maggie. Ezekiel already has this agreement with the Saviors, and so I don't think that Negan would want Ezekiel gone. Natania, she's a possibility because of course she ran away from the Saviors. In the eyes of the Saviors, she deserves to be punished for that. So that's definitely a possibility. But for the hooded figure man, we don't really know much about him or his connection to the Saviors at the moment, so I can't really say anything about that. But in terms of the other people, between Rick, Gregory, Maggie, Ezekiel, and Natania, I'm leaning more towards Natania. The next question you have is, can you name some background characters that can be a big part of the militia? Do you think they can be a big help? In terms of characters, I would say Francine, Tobin, Eric, Aaron. These are some of the background characters that are going to be part of the militia. Of course, Aaron is not really a minor character, but he can definitely be part of the militia. Whether they can be a big help, I think they can definitely be a big help. The more numbers they have, the more fighters they have. I think that's going to come a long way in this war, and their presence is definitely going to be useful. The last question you have is, if Alanna Masterson wasn't pregnant, do you think she would be part of the previous lineup? And you're talking about Tara being in the previous lineup. I definitely think that she would stay at Alexandria. She wouldn't go with the group to the hilltop. So because of that, I don't think she would be part of the lineup. The next question comes from Mr. Tokyo 777, and they ask, will the Saviors visit Woodbury or the prison from season 3 or 4, or is it too late for that? Both Woodbury and the prison are already burned to the ground. The next part of your question, also, if they did visit Woodbury, would the outcome be the same? Example, a Lucille'd victim and have their stuff taken away from them. I think that's definitely the scenario or the outcome for every community the Saviors visit. Now, in terms of getting Lucille'd first, I think that's definitely part of the Saviors' rituals as well, so they're definitely going to do that as well. The next question comes from Gavin Cottrell, and they ask, do you think it would be cool to end the TV series with Daryl and Carl walking off into the distance and showing all of their memories from season 1 to the last episode? First off, I don't think that's a great ending. It's too cliche, because of course everyone's saying Daryl is the last man standing and Carl is the last man standing because he was young when the apocalypse happened and everything like that, and Daryl because he's strong and things like that. So that's a cliche ending in itself. I think a better ending would be one that the audience doesn't see coming, for it to be shocking, a surprise. If they're gonna set out this franchise to be very different than everything that's come before it, they need to make the ending way different and in a way unique. The next question comes from Final Mystery T, and they ask, if Daryl were to be the last survivor of the series, could they continue a new horror show with just Daryl and have him in a Silent Hill horror type of theme? Would it work? What are your thoughts? First, even if Daryl is the last standing man, I don't think they would do a spin-off show just for Daryl, because Daryl's character is not as important of a character as the other ones. His story is not very interesting. I'm just kidding with you. All of the Daryl fangirls and fanboys, don't slaughter me in the comment section. I'm just kidding. In terms of Daryl getting a spin-off show if he's the last survivor, I think that's definitely a possibility. It just depends if AMC want to milk Daryl's popularity even more. If they want to do that, that's definitely a possibility. And I believe there's a bunch of ways they could take Daryl's story if he's the last survivor. So there's definitely room for a spin-off show for him. The next question comes from Maddie D123 and they ask, what do you think would have changed if Glenn were still here? So in terms of story, I don't think anything would have changed too much, because if Glenn was alive, they would still take Maggie to the hilltop because she's sick. Everything else would have lined up pretty much the exact same way. This is assuming that Abraham did get killed, or at least someone got killed instead of Glenn. So if that happened, I think the story would have been the same. The only difference there would have been is the arc that's related to Maggie leading the hilltop. I think if Glenn was still alive, it would be a situation where both Maggie and Glenn were in charge of the hilltop, not just Maggie. But other than that, I don't think story-wise anything else would have changed too much. Everything would have been pretty much the same way as it happened. The next question comes from David Farley. He has 2 questions. The first one, I was rewatching all of season 5 today, and the episode Slaptown, Beth and Noah were talking about Noah going to look for his uncle. Do you think that Morgan could be Noah's uncle because Noah looked just like Dwayne? If it was the case, they would have come out and say it. Since they didn't, I'm leaning more towards it just being a cool idea, but not actually being the case. The next question you have is, would you rather see them go back to the prison or the farm if you had to choose one? I would say the prison because it was well protected. It was closed off and everything. The farm, it was open space. For the farm, even smaller herds can take it down, like we saw. But for the prison, small herds don't really have that much of an effect. They can still fight them off. So because of that, because the prison is more protected, it has fences and everything, I would pick the prison. Now let's move on to the Walking Dead show and comic questions. The first question comes from Bilat Ni Jeny. They actually have 2 questions. The first one, if Glenn were still alive, do you think he would become the leader of the hilltop rather than Maggie? I already discussed this in the previous question. I think if Glenn was still alive, both Maggie and Glenn would be in charge of the hilltop, not just Maggie. Now, Glenn would probably be more involved with the community and fighting and stuff, as well as being the leader, but I think they both would have been in charge regardless. The next question you have is, do you think they'll end up season 7 with another cliffhanger? If they do so, do you think it is the second lineup? I definitely think they're gonna end this season with the second lineup from the comics, which basically triggered All Out War, but I don't think they're gonna make it a death cliffhanger like they did before, because they already did that. To be honest, I don't even think they're gonna do it as a cliffhanger because of the backlash the cliffhanger from last season had. So I just think they're gonna move away from a cliffhanger like that for a little while, especially because it is a lineup scene again. It's very similar, so they're definitely gonna stay away from the cliffhanger, but they could end up doing it. But I'm leaning more towards them not doing a cliffhanger. The next question comes from Nick Woods, and they ask, if they do Here's Negan on the show, what season would be the right time? So in terms of what season they're gonna do, I believe season 9 would be a great time for that, because of course season 8 is All Out War. Season 9, the first half is probably gonna be dealing with the introduction of the Whispers. So sometimes in the second half of season 9 would be the best time. So basically merging the Whispers storyline with Here's Negan, with Negan's backstory. They could even do it so that when Negan is in his jail cell, he may be talking to someone, he may be telling them a story, and they could give us Here's Negan through his story. I think that would be a clever way to do it. The next question comes from Final Mystery T, and they ask, will Robert Kirkman ever explain the reason of the outbreak? Never. He already stated that he will never address why the outbreak happened, so no. And then you ask, if not, what do you think the outbreak was? I think the outbreak was probably an experiment gone wrong, as is in most zombie type of shows or movies. The outbreak is usually related to an experiment going wrong, or some test virus going around, and then they can't control it afterwards, or things like that. So I think it's definitely related to an experiment going wrong or something along those lines. Now let's move on to The Walking Dead's comic questions. We only have one of these questions, and it's from Daily Dead Nation. They ask, what is your favorite ever issue of The Walking Dead comics? That's a great question. Now, my answer is going to be a bit biased, or not really biased, but it's not going to be completely accurate, because I never started reading the actual issues until issue 144. or 145 around that time, so I don't really know exactly what happens in each individual issue up until that point. I know most of the important ones, but not the other ones. But if I had to choose from the issues that I have read or I do know about, I would probably say either issue 100, which was very iconic with Negan's introduction, or issue 145, which was iconic in itself with the whispers, with the heads on spikes scene. So one of those would definitely be my favorite. Now let's move on to Fear the Walking Dead / The Walking Dead questions. The question comes from David Farley, and they ask, in Fear the Walking Dead episode 7, which was called Shiva, could that have foreshadowed Shiva in The Walking Dead season 7, because that episode was before The Walking Dead's season 7 trailer? I think that was just coincidence. Comic fans already knew that Shiva and Ezekiel were coming in season 7, so there was no foreshadowing required. So I definitely think that it was just coincidence. Now let's move on to The Walking Dead Telltale questions. The first one comes from Clifford Bateau, and he asks, have you played the first 2 episodes of Telltale The Walking Dead Season 3? And if so, what are your thoughts? I've actually never played it, so I can't say anything about it. I don't really have an answer for you there. The next question comes from David Farley, and he asks, if you played a video game, do you think we would ever see Kenny or Clem in The Walking Dead's TV show, or do you think maybe not? Like I said, I've never played the Telltale game, so I don't have any answers for you, but not having played the video game, for me, it would be great to be introduced to Kenny and Clem from the game in the TV show. But if you play the game yourself, you might have a different answer. But for me, because I've never actually played the game, I think it would be a great way to see Kenny and Clem from the game. Now, the important thing is for it to fit the story. If it's not gonna fit the story, I don't want to see it. If it fits the story and happens organically, then that would be good. But if it doesn't, I'd rather not see that. That's it for this Q&A video. Thanks for participating. If you want to participate in my next Q&A video, make sure to put your questions in the comment section below. Make sure to put Q&A before your question so I can find it. This is probably going to be my last video for 2016, so I'm going to be back at it in full force in 2017. Also, there's another thing I want to talk about. If you're a new subscriber, or if you don't know about this channel too much, I've created a social media page, a Facebook page for this channel. So if you want to be updated about videos that are going to be coming up and things like that, go to that Facebook page. The link is in the description, and join, and then you'll get information about the videos that are going to be coming up and things like that. So that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. I'll be back for another video.